Welcome to Geo Pulse 09, your documentary empire exploring the realms of crime, war, money, and power. Buckle up for an exhilarating journey as we delve into the heart of these gripping narratives. Let's embark together.
The year was 1929. The Roaring Twenties, a time of prosperity and excess, came to a dramatic halt. The stock market crashed, sending shockwaves across the United States. The Great Depression had begun. Banks crumbled, businesses shuttered, and millions found themselves jobless and desperate. Breadlines stretched for blocks, a stark symbol of the nation's despair. Bonnie and Clyde were not Robin Hoods, stealing from the rich to give to the poor. They were criminals, responsible for robberies, kidnappings, and murders. Yet their audacity struck a chord with many Americans. They became folk heroes, romanticized in newspapers. Their story mixed the thrill of outlaw life with a touch of glamour. Newspapers printed photos of Bonnie brandishing guns, her beret perched jauntily on her head. Clyde, handsome and brooding, became a symbol of rebellion. They were young, in love, and living life on their own terms. The nation watched, captivated, as Bonnie and Clyde's legend grew. They were a distraction from the grim realities of the Depression. Little did anyone know their story was hurtling towards a tragic and bloody end. The Great Depression was more than just a financial crisis. It was a time of profound hardship that permeated every aspect of American life. Adding to the woes of unemployment and bank failures was a natural disaster of epic proportions, the Dust Bowl. The skies turned dark as dust storms swept across the Great Plains, burying homes and crops under mountains of dirt. Farmers, already struggling, watched in despair as their livelihoods were literally blown away. The Dust Bowl triggered a mass exodus from the affected regions. Families packed their meager belongings into dilapidated cars and headed west, desperate for work and a chance to rebuild their lives. The images of their plight, captured in photographs by artists like Dorothea Lange, became iconic symbols of the Depression era. The Great Depression created a breeding ground for lawlessness. With so many struggling to survive, crime rates soared. Petty theft became commonplace. People resorted to desperate measures to feed their families and keep a roof over their heads. Organized crime tightened its grip on cities across the country. Gangs flourished, controlling everything from bootlegging operations to gambling dens. Law enforcement, often understaffed and ill-equipped, struggled to maintain order. The public, disillusioned with a system that seemed to have failed them, often viewed criminals with a mix of fear and grudging admiration. This climate of desperation and lawlessness set the stage for the rise of Bonnie and Clyde. Their daring exploits resonated with a public hungry for a glimmer of hope. Bonnie and Clyde's criminal acts were undeniable. They robbed banks, stole cars, and left a trail of bodies in their wake. Yet their story, fueled by media sensationalism and public perception, took on a life of its own. They were portrayed as modern-day Robin Hoods. This romanticized image, though largely inaccurate, resonated with a public grappling with economic despair and a sense of powerlessness. Bonnie and Clyde, in their defiance of authority and embrace of a life outside the law, represented a form of escapism. The public's fascination with Bonnie and Clyde revealed a deeper societal unease, a growing distrust of institutions, and a yearning for something to believe in. Bonnie Parker was born in 1910 in Rowena, Texas. Her father, a bricklayer, died when she was just 4 years old, leaving her mother to raise 3 children alone. The family moved to the slums of West Dallas, where poverty cast a long shadow. Life was a constant struggle. Despite the hardships, Bonnie possessed a sharp mind and a vibrant spirit. She excelled in school, particularly in English and writing. Poetry became her outlet, a way to escape the drudgery of her surroundings and give voice to her dreams of a better life. At 16, Bonnie dropped out of school to marry Roy Thornton, a handsome but troubled young man. The marriage was short-lived and tumultuous. Bonnie, though still legally bound to Roy, found herself drawn to a different kind of man, a man who promised excitement and a chance to break free from the constraints of her life. Clyde Barrow, born in 1909, grew up in the slums of West Dallas. His family, sharecroppers who had migrated from the rural South, lived in abject poverty. Clyde's first encounter with the law came when he was just a teenager, caught stealing a car. It was a harbinger of things to come. Clyde was drawn to the allure of easy money and the thrill of living on the edge. He graduated from petty theft to armed robbery. His charm and good looks belied a ruthless streak, a willingness to resort to violence to get what he wanted. Prison became a revolving door for Clyde. Each stint behind bars hardened his resolve and fueled his resentment towards authority. He vowed never to be taken alive. Clyde's obsession with fast cars became legendary. He saw them as symbols of freedom and power, a way to outrun his problems and the law. Fate had a plan for Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow. Their paths crossed in January 1930 at a mutual friend's house. Bonnie, disillusioned with her marriage and yearning for excitement, was immediately drawn to Clyde's charisma and bad boy charm. Clyde, struck by Bonnie's beauty and quick wit, saw in her a partner in crime and a kindred spirit. They embarked on a crime spree that would span several states and leave a trail of blood in its wake. The early days of Bonnie and Clyde's crime spree were marked by a mix of desperation and naive ambition. Their first targets were small-town gas stations and general stores. But with each successful heist, their confidence grew, as did their appetite for risk. Clyde taught Bonnie how to handle a gun, how to case a target, how to make a clean getaway. Bonnie, eager to prove herself, embraced her role as Clyde's partner in crime. Their love story became intertwined with their life of crime. They graduated from petty theft to bank robbery, their targets becoming symbols of the very system they felt had failed them. Banks, in their eyes, represented the wealthy elite, the very people who had profited from the misery of the Depression. Their robberies, though fueled by greed, took on a symbolic significance, a twisted form of rebellion against a world they saw as inherently unfair. Bonnie and Clyde's crime spree was not a two-person operation. They assembled a small, tight-knit gang, known as the Barrow Gang. Among the most notorious members was Clyde's older brother Buck and his wife Blanche. Buck, recently released from prison, was eager to reclaim his position by his brother's side. Another key member was W.D. Jones, a young man from a broken home who was drawn to Clyde's charisma and the allure of a life outside the law. Jones quickly proved himself to be a capable and ruthless criminal, his loyalty to Clyde unwavering. The Barrow Gang, united by their loyalty to Bonnie and Clyde and their shared desire for a better life, became a force to be reckoned with. Life on the run was a dangerous game, a constant balancing act between exhilaration and fear. Bonnie and Clyde, along with the Barrow Gang, lived a nomadic existence. They slept in stolen cars, abandoned shacks, and cheap motels, their meals often eaten on the run. Their days were a blur of planning heists, outrunning lawmen, and seeking fleeting moments of pleasure. Their exploits became bolder, their escapes narrower. Shootouts with law enforcement became commonplace. Newspapers printed sensationalized accounts of their crimes, turning them into folk heroes for some, villains for others. Despite the constant threat of capture, Bonnie and Clyde seemed to revel in their infamy. They posed for photos, guns drawn, cigarettes dangling from their lips. They were young in love and living life on their own terms. Consequences be damned. Bonnie Parker, the aspiring poet from a small Texas town, never abandoned her love of words, even as her life spiraled into a world of violence and crime. She continued to write poetry throughout her time on the run with Clyde, her notebooks filled with verses that captured the thrill, the fear, and the strange beauty of their life on the edge. Her poems offered a glimpse into the mind of a young woman caught between her dreams of a better life and the harsh realities of her circumstances. One of her most famous poems, the story of Bonnie and Clyde, read like a defiant ballad, a declaration of their love and their willingness to live and die by their own rules. As Bonnie and Clyde's notoriety grew, so did the pressure on law enforcement to bring their reign of terror to an end. What began as a series of local manhunts escalated into a multi-state pursuit, with lawmen from Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and beyond joining forces to track down the elusive outlaws. Newspapers printed daily updates on the manhunt, turning the outlaws into media sensations. Every narrow escape, every daring robbery, every shootout with the law only served to solidify their legendary status. But the relentless pursuit took its toll on Bonnie and Clyde. They were constantly on the move, their nerves frayed by the constant threat of capture. The Barrow gang began to crumble under the pressure. Buck Barrow was critically wounded in a shootout with police and later died in custody. Blanche was captured. W.D. Jones, though still loyal to Clyde, grew increasingly disillusioned with the life they were leading. The manhunt for Bonnie and Clyde took a decisive turn when Captain Frank Hamer, a legendary Texas Ranger, was brought in to lead the pursuit. Hamer, a veteran lawman with a steely gaze and a no-nonsense demeanor, was a formidable adversary. He had a deep understanding of the criminal mind. Hamer assembled a posse of seasoned lawmen, each chosen for their tracking skills, their marksmanship, and their unwavering determination. He studied Bonnie and Clyde's every move, analyzing their patterns, their habits, their vulnerabilities. Hamer knew that time was on his side. His strategy was simple but effective: cut off their escape routes, anticipate their next move, and wait for them to make a mistake. And when they did, Hamer would be ready. The end came swiftly and brutally on a dusty road near Black Lake, Louisiana, on May 23, 1934. Hamer and his posse, acting on a tip from an informant, had set up an ambush along a route they knew Bonnie and Clyde frequented. They concealed themselves in the woods, their weapons trained on the road, their patience tested by the hours that stretched into an agonizing wait. At dawn, the sound they had been waiting for broke the stillness, the roar of a stolen Ford V8 engine. Bonnie and Clyde, unsuspecting and oblivious to the danger that lay ahead, sped down the road, their guard down, their minds perhaps preoccupied with dreams of escaping their pursuers. As the car approached the ambush site, Hamer gave the signal. A deafening volley of gunfire erupted from the woods, the air thick with the smell of gunpowder. The Ford, riddled with bullets, veered off the road and crashed into a ditch. The end of the road, a hail of bullets, and the fall of two legends. Bonnie and Clyde died instantly in the hail of gunfire. The lawmen approached the wreckage cautiously, their weapons drawn. Inside the car, they found an arsenal of weapons. News of Bonnie and Clyde's death spread like wildfire across the nation. For some, they were romanticized in death. Others saw their demise as a necessary end. The outlaws' bodies were returned to Texas, where they were buried separately. Their story was immortalized in books, films, and songs. The outlaw mythologized Bonnie and Clyde in popular culture. The bullet-riddled Ford V8 became an instant spectacle. Crowds flocked to see it, captivated by the story it represented. The legend, fueled by media sensationalism, refused to die. Their story resonated deeply within the American psyche. Ballads were written and sung, recounting the Barrow gang's exploits. Hollywood quickly seized upon the Bonnie and Clyde saga. The 1967 film, starring Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway, romanticized their story. Bonnie and Clyde became cultural icons, their images emblazoned on merchandise. A cautionary tale, the enduring lessons of a life of crime. Despite the fascination with Bonnie and Clyde, their story is a cautionary tale about the seductive but destructive nature of crime. The glamour and allure of easy money mask the harsh realities of violence and tragedy. Their narrative serves as a reminder that crime exacts a heavy price. Their story offers a glimpse into a turbulent period in American history. The Great Depression created an environment where desperation blurred the lines between right and wrong. Bonnie and Clyde were products of their time, reflecting the nation's desperation. Their legacy continues to spark debate and reflection. A legacy forged in bullet holes and ballads. Bonnie and Clyde's story is a tale woven from love, crime, and tragedy. Their journey, set against the Great Depression, continues to captivate. They were criminals responsible for acts of violence. Yet their defiance and love made them anti-heroes. Their legend, amplified by the media, endures. Their story is a cautionary tale about life outside the law, but also about love and loyalty in hard times. Their bullet-riddled car is a stark reminder of their choices. Ballads and films keep their legend alive. Forever young, reckless, and in love. Were they villains or victims? Share your thoughts below. Like and subscribe for more captivating stories from history.